Hello everyone. I figured it's about time that we talk about my top 10 book recommendations. Now let me emphasize, these aren't my top 10 favorite books of all time. They are just ones that I chose because obviously I rated them highly, I really love them, and I also tried to pick, for the most part, books that I felt like people that aren't super popular, that aren't super book talky, and that a majority of people haven't already read. So those were kind of the criteria I used in choosing these books. And I also tried to pick some from a bunch of different genres. So let's get into it. We're gonna start with the ones that I don't have physical copies of. The first book we're gonna start off with, The Ministry of Time by Kayleigh Bradley. It's kind of hard to pinpoint the genre. Pretty sci-fi-y. It also has a subplot of romance. It also kind of gives the feel of literary fiction and also a slight bit of historical fiction because the main character, she's actually unnamed the entire book, which is very strange. She is hired by the UK government. The government has figured out a way to basically create a time machine. They are testing out how it might work on bringing people from history into real time by taking people who died and bringing them to modern time. The main character has been hired as one of many to basically help someone from history acclimate to modern times. And something really interesting is she is assigned Commander Graham Gore, and he's actually a real person from history. He was a officer in the British Navy. It kind of takes you through her journey of helping him acclimate into modern society. The main character is also half white, half Asian. She is dealing a lot with constant identity crisis because she doesn't feel like she fully fits into the white community or the Asian community because she is half. Everything with the time travel is really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I loved this book. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This book follows a 16-year-old high school student named Asa who is dealing with being a teenager, but also deals with obsessive compulsive disorder. Basically, it just takes you through a segment of her life with the ups and downs that come with having OCD. I read that one of John Green's goals in writing this book, because he does have OCD, was rather than describing or just like saying the fear or the compulsion, he instead wanted to find a way to really take you through the whole thought process, the whole cycle, and help someone who doesn't have OCD to better understand what it looks and feels like to have OCD. The next one that I don't have is The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. This is actually an autobiography about a family who kind of blew up on YouTube. Their channel was The 9 Passengers, I think. This is actually about their eldest daughter talking about her experience being a child YouTuber. Many will know that their mom is now in prison for abusing her younger siblings, and there's a lot that went into that, but this is basically her story and experience. And the last one that I don't have a physical copy of is Recursion by Blake Crouch. This book is a sci-fi. It's about this kind of dystopian issue that's happening in the world it's set in, just like regular modern day. People at this time are suddenly seemingly contracting a whole second set of memories that are not connected to the life that they've actually lived up to that point. It's causing people to literally go crazy. They have no idea why or what's going on or how to fix this issue. And there are kind of two different main characters. Their stories do connect at one point, but for a good chunk of the book, they are independent to each other. They, in their own life circumstances, are tackling this dilemma that is happening. It was probably the most trippy book I've ever read. Just like the concepts of, as you're learning what is causing these second set of memories and how it's happening, and then just like the perception of our memories, how we retain information, how we retain experiences that we have. I was kind of having a crisis while I was reading it because I was just like thinking very thoroughly about how all of these things and how it can pertain to reality, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's honestly so trippy and so interesting. That's all I got. All right, moving on to the ones that I do actually have a copy of. We Are All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter. This book really took me by surprise. I'd never heard of it. I haven't really heard anyone else talk about it. This is a thriller mystery. It takes place in a small town. A police officer in the town named Emmy is the main character. She is trying to solve a series of murders that have happened in the town. There are a lot of things she learns about herself, about her family along the way. It's very interesting. It doesn't hold the same structure and organization of any other thriller or mystery book that I've read, and that was really captivating for me just because it was so unique in the way that the story was told. I also just really loved the writing. There are also a lot of heartwarming, emotional things going on throughout the entirety of the book as well, so just really had everything that I look for in a book. Mixing it up a little, we have Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I have read a good chunk of Brandon Sanderson novels. This one is definitely my favorite. This is a fantasy novel, and it follows a young girl. She's a teenager named Vin. She lives on the streets. Both of her parents are dead. She doesn't have any family, and she's basically just trying to survive when she is noticed and recruited by a group of people who are trying to take down the current empire. They realize that Ben could play a very large part in taking down the current ruling system. It also will really hit you with all of the emotions. I've reread it a few times, and it stands the test of time for me. Okay, this next one is the only one that I chose that is extremely popular, especially with the scandals surrounding it in the last few years. When I first read this book, it rocked my world. This was actually the book that got me back into reading as an adult. And even though it's so popular, I think the attention is justified. It Ends With Us. I am not Colleen Hoover's biggest fan. I haven't read all of her other books. There are some of her other books I've read that I didn't really like, but this one is so good to me, especially as someone who hasn't personally and thankfully dealt with physical abuse. This really opened my eyes to a world of hurt and pain that I have never experienced, and allowed me to feel empathy in a way for this type of situation, which again, this is the whole reason I love books. I love that they can broaden your perspectives and help you to understand things that you haven't yourself experienced, and this book really did it for me. Anyone in my personal life will tell you I was destroyed beyond belief for literal weeks, maybe months after I read this book. Certainly, you should be an adult before you read it because it has some very explicit content, but I think it's really important, and I genuinely learned so much from this book that even though it is popular and whatever, I do think it's worth mentioning because it is just so good. Next is a book that was kind of popular a few years ago, but it's called Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book primarily follows a character named Sam, has a lifelong passion for video games, and his friend Sadie, who are just kind of best friends from the time that they cross paths with each other. They start a video game company, and you just kind of see through many years how their friendship ebbs and flows. It is a literary fiction. I think this was the first literary fiction I ever read, actually. Love the premise of it. I love the takeaways. Also, I don't play video games. I've never been in that world, but learning just a tiny bit of what goes into creating a video game, how much work it is, the passion that people have behind it, I think is really cool. Okay, I've talked about this book a million times. It's still my favorite standalone book of all time. The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. Something that is funny is that this book really seems to either really bring emotions out of people and they love it, or they absolutely hate it, which is really confusing to me. I don't understand why that is, but I've had people read it and feel the same way that I did about it, and I've had people read it and hate it. I don't know. This book follows a girl named Georgia who has lived for most of her teenage years in the UK. She returns back to her small hometown in the South because her dad dies, and she hasn't been back there in many years. And coming back to her hometown forces her and her family to deal with a lot of past trauma and issues. For the 5,000th time, I just filmed a good chunk of stuff while the baby monitor was on in the background. Basically, this could be confusing, but we have this monitor so I can watch the 2-year-old when he's sleeping, and it's an app on my phone that connects to a camera in his room, but I have it set on like a background function where even if I don't have the app open, I can hear it. And we have like a white sound noise in his room, and so every time that I film a video while he's napping and the app is running in the background, you can hear the white noise sound in the video. All this to say, somehow, as if it never existed, the footage of the last book rec that I had is gone, disappeared, missing. Just gonna talk about it here now. My very last book rec is The Favorites by Lane Fargo, especially relevant right now because it is a modern take on Wuthering Heights, which, if I haven't spoken on it enough on this channel in the last few weeks, that movie did come out recently. It's a literary fiction, and it's following a ice skating partnership, Kat and Heath, and essentially they're trying to become the best of the best in the skating world. So you're just taken through a really large chunk of their lives from childhood up into adulthood. The book is set up in a really interesting way. Half the time it's set in interview styles. It will be Kat actually narrating and telling the story, but in between chapters, there are interviews of basically a bunch of different characters who are in the book that will be telling their point of view in between her narration. This was probably the most stressful book I've ever read in my life. I consumed it so quickly because I was at peak stress levels, trying to figure out what was going on, what was going to happen. Just when you think it can't get any more dramatic and horrible, it does. It was so entertaining and also made me hate my life because I was so stressed, but also in the best way. Those are my book recs. Let me know if you've read any of them or if any of them are on your TBR. And obviously, I recommend that you read all of them. Some of my faves, and they're so good. I'll see you in the next one.